Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another segment of the Late Night Show, Dr. Kojo. This is a late night show. Let's get started. We're going to be talking about 3 signs that it's time to leave a relationship. So, the number one sign that it's time to leave a relationship, you're constantly reminding them about the things you don't like, slash, having to set boundaries consistently, right? Y'all should not have to be setting, you shouldn't have to do this more than once, right? If you set boundaries correctly, you let people, let's just say, let's take the example. Let's say you just met somebody, right? You were on Bumble or whatever people use nowadays to meet people, or maybe you met somebody in person. However, which way it happened, you met somebody, and then you've been talking for, like, let's say 2.5 months. After 2.5 months of spending time twice a week, almost every day, like, you kind of get somebody's cadence. You know what they're about, right? If you tell the person in the beginning, let's just say, actually, let me think of. I'll make it personal. Let me think of something that I would say, right? If I'm talking to a young lady, I would probably say something like, "Hey, I'm not a big fan of texting throughout the day. So let's set some time out to, like, talk on the phone, FaceTime, or once a week, let's go out to eat and let me get to like talk to you. But I'm not a fan of texting throughout the day because I'm busy and my ADHD brain is scatterbrained automatically. So I'm going to forget things. Like today, I forgot a lot of stuff. And tomorrow, I'm going to forget stuff. But hopefully, I can get the priority tasks done. So if I have to mention this to a lady I'm talking to, right? Month 2, month 3, month 4, month 5, I have to keep saying, hey, like, I like hearing from you, but can we talk on the phone? Can we get up in person? The texting is kind of confusing me. Like, I'm behind on things. If that person is still doing that, what's that sign of? The person's not listening to you. Now, we're not going to be quick to call them a narcissist or, call them out of their name. We won't do that. But the person is not listening to you, right? If you have to constantly remind them, hey, let's say, they make a joke about you and, you laugh the first time, but you're like, yeah, it's a funny joke, but like, I prefer if you just didn't say that. Then they say, oh, okay, cool. I won't say it again, right? If it happens a second time, honestly, if it happens one more time, especially if it's a new relationship or whatever, that is probably the time to bounce, right? Every yes you say is a no to something else that's probably in line for you. So if you let somebody slide one time, there's a good chance they're going to do it again, right? And now, if let's say you've been married to somebody for 10 years and y'all have 4 kids and you have a lot, like, you built a life together, then this advice is not applied to you, okay? I'm talking about, like, when you first meet somebody, right? If you have to constantly remind them, hey, I don't like the way you do that, what's that sign of? That they don't listen. That person doesn't listen to you. Hey, I'm sorry. I hate to bring this up, like, I hate to be a bother, and I mentioned it when we first met, but anytime that you show up to my house unannounced or whatever, it just makes me feel like you don't respect me, right? You next week, if they show up to your house unannounced again, all right, that's the time to cut it off, And a lot of people wonder how they end up in narcissistic situations or whatever is going on. If you let something slide once, I promise you'll come back around and be like, I should have checked them the first time. And once again, this does not mean that they're an evil person, right? They're working through their own trauma and insecurities like we are too. But if you don't speak up for yourself, who will? You have to be your own biggest cheerleader. This is very important. I need y'all to listen up on this one. There's no trust. There's no trust. And look, I got trust issues just like y'all. Maybe even worse. But when there's no trust, you gotta bounce. You gotta go. What are you doing? There's no trust. If you're a team, it's the same thing as, like, let's say you're playing team sports. If you don't trust your teammate to make the shot, you'll never pass the ball. Kobe Bryant never passed the ball when the Lakers were rebuilding because he didn't trust his teammates. He was like, y'all suck. Y'all don't practice. I'm not going to pass you the ball. That's why that Lakers team never won. And guess what? When they got some good players, they got Paul Gasol. They got, who else? Lamar Odom. Once they got the pieces that Kobe needed, he would pass them. He passed the ball to Ron Artest in Game 7 of the NBA Finals, in the biggest game of his career to that point, because he trusted him, right? And right now, there's a lot of people who are in relationships with somebody else, and you don't trust them. You'll eat the food that they make, but you don't trust them. You'll have unprotected sex with that person, but you don't trust them. Should we keep going? Y'all see where we go with this? You trust them around your kids, but you don't really trust them. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'll go on trips and vacations with them and do all these elaborate things, but you don't really trust that person, And to people in that situation, what I say is, what are we actually doing? Like, what are we actually doing? And I'm speaking from personal experience. I've, been dating somebody, talking to a beautiful woman. I'm like, oh, she's amazing. And when it comes down to a certain situation, like maybe she's going to be at the house by herself for a little bit or something, I'm like, ooh, do I need to lock up some valuables or, and this, I'm telling on myself and guys, sometimes we do that. We're like, I should have maybe thought about if I trust. Do I even like this woman? Do I trust this woman? Do I trust her? Wasted energy, yeah. And Mickey, yeah, no, look, it hits home. And I'm speaking from personal experience, and this has been like the light bulb for me where I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't think I should be with this woman. I don't trust her. Like when push comes to shove, I'm like, this is not an emergency contact. She's a contact, but she's not an emergency contact. It doesn't mean that she's a bad person. It just means that for whatever reason, I don't trust her. Why don't I trust her? We don't know. But when you answer that question, you get to the actual root of the issue. Why don't you trust that person? They're in your house. They're eating your food. You're sleeping with them. You go on trips together. You take cool photos and post on Instagram to show people how happy you are. But you don't trust that person. But the third point is you don't believe it'll work out. Right? And this is more so of a gut feeling. And this is very arbitrary. But have y'all ever been in a situation where you're in a relationship and things are going good, right? And for some reason you're like, nah, this is not my person. It's not going to work out. And it's a nagging feeling. You can't really explain it. Maybe it's your body trying to tell you something, or it's just something. And it's even hard for me to put this in words. But I feel like we know what we're talking about. Sometimes you're with somebody and there's clearly, when you get down to the root of the issue, there's something that's not going right that should be going right normally. You don't just feel this way. You're not just with somebody and everything is like perfect, and all of a sudden you're like, I gotta bounce, I gotta dip. It's not like that, right? It's not like that. Normally there's something that makes you go like internally like, I don't know if I should be here, or I don't know if this is it for me. And when you feel that, of course, it's good to have a conversation and see if you can find a solution. But even if you don't leave the relationship, that's a good time to just pause and just figure out like what's going on here. And if you can talk things through, you'll normally feel better. So for this last one, I wouldn't say just straight up leave, but you got to pause, because sometimes when you have that feeling, what you'll find is over time, the answer comes to you. You're like, that's why I couldn't be with this person. That's why I couldn't trust them. That's why I couldn't feel safe with that person. So when you have that feeling that you're like, and especially for those of us who are neurodivergent, we have like our spidey senses are off the charts. Like sometimes you'll just be somewhere and you're like, hold up, I'm not safe right now. I gotta get out of here. And guess what? When you leave, you realize that, oh, thank God I left. There's a reason why, right? There's a reason why.